In this unit, I will provide an overview of branding. We'll talk about what branding is, why it's important, how companies use different strategies, and we'll talk about a lot of examples. But first, I'd like to ask you this question. Which cup of coffee would you expect to pay more for? Most people would say the Starbucks would cost more. But isn't that interesting? Isn't coffee just a commodity? It's a bean that's grown and processed and brewed into a liquid beverage. How can one coffee be different from another? And for years and years, that was the case. There were many different coffee companies and many different levels of name awareness, but there really wasn't a lot of distinction and feeling that one was really different from another, until along comes Starbucks and shows the world that that's not the case. When most people purchase Starbucks, they're not just buying the coffee. They're buying the aroma, the packaging, the experience, the ambiance of the stores. All of those things are part of the Starbucks brand. It used to be that water was water. It came out of a tap or a spring or a well, but there really wasn't much difference between waters. Certainly some waters tasted different perhaps, but there were no brands of waters. How could you brand a commodity like water? Well, it happens. There are waters that are positioned very high-end, expensive, usually determined based on what their source is. Did you ever notice that if something comes from somewhere else, we often perceive it as being better than if it came locally? Is water in the Fiji Islands really any better than water anywhere else? Who knows? But it's the perception that matters. There are other high-end waters and sparkling waters and many other types of waters. Notice how this one is packaged very differently to make it feel more exclusive. Then there are the regular waters, everyday waters that you might buy: Aquafina, Dasani, Ice Mountain. Walmart has their own brand of purified water, and it goes on and on and on. But again, think about what's happening here. Companies have figured out how to create the perception in your mind that some waters are different than others, that some waters should cost more than others. When you reach into a convenience store shelf and you have a choice of these two types of waters, how do you make a decision on what you purchase? Here's a water I found interesting. Now, I've never drank this, but I've read about it. It's called Berg. It's called Berg because it comes from an iceberg. The company talks about how this water started its journey over 15,000 years ago in the ancient glaciers of western Greenland. And they talk about how isolation of these icebergs has made the source water very inaccessible to man. The icebergs are harvested. Now notice they call it harvesting, which that right there is a unique nuance. The ice is harvested, melted, and bottled under strict quality conditions in order to preserve the water's natural qualities. I'm not making that up. That's from the promotion of iceberg water. Berg water is very limited in quantity. The company talks about how extended winters and harsh conditions in the North Atlantic make harvesting the ice a very dangerous task. The bottle is designed to look like a melted iceberg, although it's plastic, and it has a green cap. The green tint reflects the ice cold, clean ambiance of the water. Let's move on from water. Let's look at green t-shirts. Which green t-shirts here might you pay more for? Most people would say it's the Hollister Surf Club shirt. But it's just a green t-shirt. Why would one be better than the other? Because it's got the brand. Which bananas might you feel are higher in quality? Those that are branded Chiquita or those with no brand? A banana isn't just a banana anymore. One time, several years ago, I was on the way to the lake with my family on a hot summer afternoon, and we stopped at a convenience store to buy ice for the cooler. And that was the first time I noticed premium ice. You could buy regular ice cubes, came in a clear plastic bag with a drawstring. It was very inexpensive to do so, or you could pay twice as much for half as much and get Arctic Glacier premium ice. Of course, I was fascinated by this, so I bought a package. And on the packaging, it talks how the ice is frozen from the inside out, which gives it a superior taste. Now, I never knew that it really made a difference how the ice cubes were frozen, or that one ice cube could be different from another. But apparently, they can. Then I'm in the grocery store one time, and I noticed purified aqua ice. You may remember back in the days before ice makers, when ice cubes were made by filling trays and put in the freezer and freezing them. Well, that's essentially what this product is. You buy it in the grocery store, but they are pre-packaged trays of water which you freeze and then remove the foil lid, and presto, you have purified aqua ice. The appeal here is for people that drink expensive beverages, perhaps expensive whiskeys or scotches or things like that, and wouldn't feel right about putting a regular ice cube into an expensive drink. You do the math on these ice cubes, and they cost about 10 cents each. Maybe if you drop one of these and it slides under the refrigerator, maybe you'll get it. But there's more. Soon there's other companies that are having their version of premium ice cubes. So it's not just that one company has distinguished their ice cubes from another and created a premium category. Now there's competition within the premium category itself. These are the kinds of things that fascinate me about branding, and that's what we're going to talk about in this lesson. What is a brand? A brand is a way to distinguish your product or your service from someone else's. The name comes from how cattle and livestock used to be branded on the open ranges of the Wild West. When you had a lot of cows running around on open ranges, ranchers had to have a way to determine whose cow belongs to who. They branded the cattle, just like companies now brand their products, so you can distinguish one from the other. Brands can be names. Microsoft, Apple, Starbucks, Walmart, Ole Miss, those are all good brand names. Good brand names are also sometimes synonymous with the product features that they convey. For example, Mr. Clean. Even if you have no idea what Mr. Clean is, by looking at the brand name, you understand what the product is probably about. Same thing with Dust Buster. You know what that product is all about just by virtue of the name. Pizza Hut. That's a good brand name. You know what the restaurant is about. However, when Pizza Hut began branching into other things, like buffalo wings, they needed a way to set that apart with a different brand. Because who would go to Pizza Hut for chicken? Many Pizza Hut locations now are co-branded with the Wing Street brand. Red Lobster. You understand what that restaurant is about simply by reading the brand. Newsweek. Another good brand name. In recent years, there's been a trend towards using numerals and letters to distinguish brands. The automobile companies have begun doing this more aggressively than the past. Lincoln, BMW, Mercedes, Lexus, and many other cars don't use brand names anymore. They use letters. One of the reasons for that is the Lincoln Company did some research one time and realized people were more likely to identify with their particular make of vehicle than the brand. If you'd ask someone what they drive, they would say a town car or a Continental. They weren't saying the word Lincoln. Lincoln was very concerned about how that might erode their brand equity. Few people, when you ask them what kind of car you drive now, would say, I drive an MKX. You would say, I drive a Lincoln MKX. That's the rationale for the movement towards letters and numerals. Sometimes brands are only numbers. WD-40, 409. The brands are simply numbers themselves. More and more, brand names are made-up words. You see this a lot in the pharmaceutical industry. That's because it's getting so difficult to come up with new brand names. I used to give students assignments and have them come up with a company and needed a brand name for a product or service. It's very difficult to find something that isn't already being used and for which you can buy the URL and the other things which you would need to promote it. When you make up a name, you usually avoid that problem. Brands can be symbols and images. You know what this brand is. You probably know what this brand is. And this one. And this one. And this one. When you can simply look at a visual and understand the brand, that's a sign that something's well branded. Brands can be packages and package shapes. You probably know what this product is, even though I've covered up the label on it. You probably know this one, and this one, and this one. Everyone knows this one. Perhaps this one, a unique shape for a candy bar, a Toblerone is what this is, or Tootsie Roll. There can be many, many other examples, but simply by seeing the shape and coloring of the packaging, you understand what the brand is. Dutch Boy Paints has done an interesting thing. Their research showed that one of the things consumers hate about painting is the packaging of the cans. Think about it. They're hard to open, hard to pour from, hard to seal, very messy. What an innovative idea to come up with new packaging for your product to make yours stand out from the others. Dutch Boy Paints now come in pourable, resealable containers. Brands can be sounds. I've not embedded these sounds into this presentation, and I'm not about to hum these, but you can know what they are when you hear the NCAA jingle during the NCAA March Madness time, or when the MGM lion roars, or if you have a Windows computer, when it starts up it will make a certain sound, or the NBC chimes. Those things are all brands. Brands are also slogans. What companies do you associate with "Just Do It"? Or "Melts in your mouth, not in your hands"? Do you remember Tony the Tiger saying, "They're great"? Roni, "It's the San Francisco treat." Or "Eat fresh" at Subway. Those are all branded slogans. Brands can be colors. What color is breast cancer awareness? almost everyone knows it's pink. What color is associated with Lance Armstrong? Yellow. What color is associated with Coke? It's red. Brands can be typeface. The Ole Miss font typeface is branded. Here's an interesting situation that occurred back in my home of Iowa, although I know things like this have happened in other states as well. The image on the left, the red W, is the logo for the University of Wisconsin. The W on the right, the purple one, was a logo for a local high school called Waukee. It's an Indian name, the Waukee School District. It had been their logo for years until the University of Wisconsin sued for trademark infringement. Now, of course, people in the community of Iowa where this was taking place couldn't understand why anyone would confuse the University of Wisconsin with the local Waukee School District. But unfortunately, they didn't have the resources to fight the university. And to try, their reasoning was a W is a W. How can someone trademark a letter? But they can, and they did. And the University of Wisconsin won. The Waukee School District was forced to change their logo. You can see here the before and after. Very slight, subtle changes, but it satisfied the University of Wisconsin. We wouldn't want to get our W's confused. The best brands are easily recognizable. I've showed this symbol prior, but when you see it, you know exactly what the brand is. The best brands can be trademarked. One time I was eating dinner and I happened to look at the back of the bottle of salad dressing that I had put on my salad, and for the first time realized that Vidalia onion is actually a trademarked brand from the Georgia Department of Agriculture. Who knew? The best brands convey passion. Apple is a company that tends to create great passion and loyalty among their users and other customers. Again, great brands convey passion and have loyalties. The Green Bay Packers are one of the top NFL teams when it comes to fan passion and brand loyalty. Some people actually put brands on their body. Which brand conveys a more youthful image? Most people would say Pepsi. And it's because of the marketing and the other things that Pepsi has done over the years to talk about things like Pepsi Generation and other things. It's still the feeling that their brand is more youthful than the established brand of Coca-Cola. Which brand is more geared towards children? I showed this in one of the previous lessons, but it points out the fact that you can have different personalities associated with different brands. The best brands are not quite synonymous with the product. Kleenex is an example of this. For many people, they don't ask for a tissue, they ask for a Kleenex, but Kleenex is actually the brand name. The reason I say that the brands are not quite synonymous with the product is if the brand names become such that everyone always refers to the product generically as that brand name, that company can actually be at risk of losing the brand. That's why companies go to great lengths to reiterate that their name is the brand. These are Kleenex brand tissues. It's Band-Aid brand adhesive strips, Jell-O brand gelatin, Q-tips, Post-it, chapstick, Vaseline, Velcro, rollerblade, thermos. Most people don't know it, but those are all brand names. The best brands have equity. What that means is the dollar value of the brand itself. If a company were to be sold, for example, there's the price of all the factories and equipment and tangible things that go with that sale, but there's also the intangible brand, and that has a price too. Coca-Cola is one of the world's top brands in terms of brand equity, meaning the dollar value of the Coke brand itself is worth a tremendous amount of money. Most estimates put the Coke brand equity at about $60 billion. Again, what that means is if Coke were to be sold or purchased by another company, there would be a $60 billion price tag simply for the name itself. Brands can have negative connotations. BP's brand took a tremendous hit with the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And sometimes companies rebrand their products. ValueJet was a discount airline that in 1996 experienced a fatal crash in the Florida Everglades. Suddenly, few people felt comfortable riding on a ValueJet. Well, guess what? ValueJet became AirTran, so that people didn't make the association with the tarnished name. AirTran, I believe, has recently been purchased by Southwest Airlines. Comcast is another case of recent rebranding. Comcast, the cable company, in many markets now goes by Xfinity. Las Vegas is a city that has been rebranded many times. About a decade ago, the slogan and the theme for the brand of Las Vegas was, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." They moved to more family themes, but then went back to the branding of Las Vegas as an adult destination. Old brands can live again. CompUSA was a chain of computer stores that went out of business a number of years ago. Circuit City was an electronics retailer that I believe it was 2008 closed their doors. But because they each had strong brand names, they've been revised. Other investors bought the rights to use the brand name, and these brands continue, albeit in very different format today. People can be brands. I've always said that when you can say someone's first name and everyone knows exactly who you're talking about, that's a good brand. Tiger, Miley, Cher, Oprah. These guys, especially number 10, have great brands in the world of football. Let's look at branding strategy. Some companies use multi-product branding. That is where you have many different products that all use the same name. Kellogg's Corn Flakes, Kellogg's Rice Krispies, Kellogg's Pop-Tarts. They all use the Kellogg's name. That can be very effective because if you feel good about Kellogg's, one Kellogg product, the chances that you'll try another Kellogg product are higher. Think of how much easier it is for Kellogg's to bring out a new product continuing to use the Kellogg's brand name, because while the product might be new, you're still familiar with the brand. That's a very different branding strategy than Procter & Gamble, which tends to name all of their products with completely different brand names that are not associated with the same company. But these products all originate with the company of Procter & Gamble. But you don't call it Procter & Gamble Tide or Procter & Gamble Charmin or Gillette. or the other brands listed here. This is unlike the Kellogg's example, where again everything uses the Kellogg's brand name. Some companies have private label branding. Sears, historically, has been a company that did this. They have Craftsman tools, Kenmore appliances, Die Hard batteries. Those are brands you can only get at their stores. Now, recently I did see where some of the Sears brands are being sold at other hardware stores and in some cases Home Depot stores. That's a way of extending their brand reach. But we still associate these brands with Sears. Walmart is another company that does this with their Great Value brands, their Sam's Choice brands, and many of the other private label brands that they have. And again, they're called private label because you can only get them at the specific retailer. It's a way of building loyalty. If you can build loyalty with a particular brand, but that brand can only be purchased in a certain store, it can be a good strategy. Finally, I'd like to mention something that Kraft Foods did earlier in 2012 that had a lot of marketing people shaking their heads. Kraft is a very strong brand, been around for many, many years. They rebranded their international division, began using another name and another logo. It's a risk thing whenever a company does that, because people might not associate the new brand with the old product that they know and love. The brand that Kraft came up with, this is pronounced Mondelez International. And so internationally, Kraft Foods will now be known as Mondelez. It's a clever word. It means world and it means delicious. A lot of branding experts are saying it's also very confusing. Not only the switch from Kraft, which people are familiar with, to the newer brand, but it's a little challenging to understand and to pronounce sometimes. We'll see how this brand works for Kraft. That concludes this short presentation on branding.